Hey there, excited to be here today. And we're at Pearson Butler Law Firms. As you can tell, this is not my normal office, white background setting or my backyard. And I have asked Jeff Wood from Lift Financial to join me today. And he is going to be our expert panelist. And this is actually my first time having a guest speaker. So we're excited to have you, and thanks for taking the time to do this. So my month of focus this month is on protecting your business and how to bring safety to your business. And so this week, I've kind of been teasing everybody with what we can do to help protect your business from a recession, or as some people might say, we're already in a recession. So Jeff has actually a very unique set of skills, and I don't know, there's a line like that from the movie. We decided that it's a special set of skills.
Liam Neeson. Yeah.
Anyways, that's our Jeff Wood for us today. So we're gonna have why don't you tell us a little bit about why you so specialize?
Well, you brought it up, so I'm not anyway. So I actually have a CPA. I've been a CPA since 2005. I did public accounting for a number of years, where I worked for a company called KPMG and then for Deloitte in two different areas. And I did auditing. So I got to go into companies and see the good, bad, and the ugly of AR, AP, payroll, inventory, whatever it may be. And then I was an accounting manager for a few years. And then I actually ran the accounting and finance department for a company for over 10 years, eventually becoming their VP of finance and accounting. And so I've seen a lot of different ways of doing things. And lived through some difficult times within the company, I guess, we had the downturn in 2008, and we had another little bit of a downturn in 2011, and we've had a few bumps along the road, just with the economy, and it hasn't all been, roses. So anyway, that's probably what you're referring to.
No, absolutely. And so you've moved on since then, and you're now with Lift Financial.
So now I'm a financial advisor. And but I still maintain my CPA. I also have a CMA, which is a certified managerial accountant as well. And so I've maintained those because they really help me in what I do now, and then also to be able to give good sound advice. So.
Awesome. So as you can see, he is definitely an expert in this field, and excited to ask him this question versus just me spouting off information that I've been able to gather. So Jeff, what do you think is some of the best things that a business can do everyone's talking about it. We're headed into a recession. Some say we're already there. What do you say would be a few tips and tricks that will help businesses to make it through the recession or prepare as we're getting into it?
So whether or not we're in there yet, it's yet to be seen. Who knows? But definitely, I've heard the quote, and I think we talked about this earlier, that the time when the time of action is here, the time for preparation is past, right? And I think that's very important, both on a personal level and then also on a business level. So businesses making sure that we're taking the preparation. So when the recession is definitely in full force, or if it comes or whatnot, and our main focus needs to be sales and producing revenue and generating cash. Cash flow is king. That's the number one reason that businesses go out of business, because they lose solvency and they lose cash, even if they're making a ton of sales. Perhaps they're not converting those over. It doesn't matter if you owe me a lot. It's whether or not you pay me what you owe me, so I can go and pay my bills as a business, right? And so I think when we get to a recession, if we're worried about 20 different things because we don't have all of our other stuff in order, that's a problem. That's a big problem, right? And so if we can just be organized right now, get your books in order. I mean, that goes right in line with exactly what you do. I know you're the best bookkeeper I know. Use Britta. Use Britta to get your books in order. Make sure that everything is in place, that you have the managerial data and information that you need to make good decisions. And you can't do that if you're flying blind. And so getting your books in order is the first thing. The second thing that I thought of is getting the right people on board, making sure if we need some development of the people that we have, maybe that's it. Maybe it's bringing in the resources or the people that we need in order to be okay if there's problems. Somebody who knows how to get financing. Maybe that's big in some companies. Bring in that person. And equally important, I think, is also to, get the people off the bus that we maybe don't need, or, with the limited resources as a company has. Maybe it's, hey, this person really isn't the best fit. Maybe they're not happy. Maybe we're not happy. Maybe we need to figure out and get the right person in so that we can move forward with our business.
That's a great idea. Something you may not necessarily think of as a business owner when you're thinking about your cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to think about all aspects of your business and where you can either cut costs or be most effective.
And during a recession too, I mean, right now, everybody's feeling the pressure of wages going up, which is a great thing overall, I think, for the economy, maybe to help us to figure out and kind of restabilize, because when inflation happens and prices start getting more expensive, but people don't get paid more, that's when, personally, I mean, we all feel it at the gas pump, we feel it in the grocery store. But as those adjust, it's really difficult sometimes for employers to go, okay, now I need to pay this person more. And maybe that's a part of it. I'm not going to advocate not to pay your people more if the market, demands it. But maybe it's also bringing in other resources or other means to really get everybody on board and feel the camaraderie. For example, I think it was Napoleon. He had a quote that said, men will, I don't know, work for money, but they'll live and die for 2 inches of ribbon. And so maybe it's, I had an employer one time that would make t-shirts, on the $10, $15, $20 cost of those t-shirts that had the company logo and kind of rally the troops. It really felt almost like a fraternal sorority type feel of bringing in people to, and it made us come together. And so the cost of that versus, just straight up pay, it was probably a lot cheaper to do that.
I agree. I felt that in so many different businesses that I've worked for in the past. Like if you feel appreciated and valued, or, even just having the flexibility in the job sometimes is super important, where if you can't pay them as much, but you're able to go to your child's performance at school, or, you don't get crap for being late, or, to the job obviously you don't want to do that all the time, people, but
it's always difficult as an employer to walk that fine line of keeping people accountable, having the respect, but also making them feel valued and loved. Yeah. And how do you walk that? I think you can walk that in the right way, but you can't do it in the old way of a top-down hierarchical approach. You have to make people feel valued and bring them in, to be a part of, something bigger.
Yeah. So basically, you don't have to pay them everything as long as you're able to help them to feel appreciated and add value in other ways.
And maybe have a vision of where the company's headed. Maybe they see, hey, right now maybe isn't the time, but if I can delay that gratification and maybe get paid later on down the road when we hit a few milestones and the business is able to do something, maybe we put that in writing and we go, I'm working now for something bigger, delaying that gratification.
That's awesome. Those are some great tips. Yeah. So do you have any other great advice before we close?
Yeah, I think just, if I know personally, if I am kind of worried about being laid off or being let go, or my means of, providing for my family is at risk, and then what do? We make sure we have an emergency fund. We make sure that we have those cash reserves. I think a company needs to do the same thing. They need to evaluate their cash and make sure that, are we spending money on the right things? Can we reduce expenses? Are we getting the value out of it? Maybe we're spending money on advertising that just isn't working. But making sure that we're making the right decisions, because we don't want to cancel things that really are bringing in business, but just having the data behind it.
Yeah.
So cash reserves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, no, I was going to say, from a bookkeeper's perspective, evaluating your financial statements at the end of the month is super important.
Yeah.
If you go through and you look and you found that you had your subscription to some software that you haven't used in 6 months, right there you could be saving yourself several $100s. So where it takes a little bit of time each month, but it could save you a lot of money.
Yeah. So, and part of those reserves could be debt structuring too. I mean, debt structuring we could talk about. We could probably do a whole cast on that. But for example, maybe you're paying high interest rates where you could be paying lower interest rates if you just refinanced on that, both personally and as a company. There are different programs, SBA loans, things like that you go, hey, rather than taking a personal loan or some loan that we're paying 20% as a company, could we get this down to 5 or 10%? Could we lower that amount? And do we need to make sure that we have a line of credit in place when it's easier to get that line of credit now? then when we hit a recession and banks start tightening up some of their procedures and it's really difficult, and that line of credit can also be a cash reserve, so that if we do have an instance where, payroll is coming up next week, but we can't afford it, but we have this line of credit we can go and draw upon and be able to pay that, so that we don't go insolvent. Because the worst thing about a recession is it's not just what sales we're making, but it's also it's really what cash we're bringing in. I can make all the sales in the world, but if I'm not bringing in the cash, then things on the other side for me, creditors start piling up, and then if I miss a payroll, and that is even more important than the creditors, and then I start losing people and my business basically implodes. We don't want that. A line of credit could be gold in that
Something
situation.
I would never have thought of, to go and apply for a line of credit now when you can get it at a low interest rate or lower interest rate potentially, and have it just there as an
And actually get it approved. Maybe
get
it
it
won't be
approved
approved
right now, and exactly, and later on, where you might have to take out really high interest rate loans and have stuff everywhere. That's a really great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
The last thing that I would think of too is evaluate as a business owner what drives your revenue. Because what drives your revenue is what is going to sustain you during those difficult times. So for some businesses, it might be salespeople. Salespeople drive your revenue. Get that in place now. Making sure that you're spending the time to interview and hire and train and get those people in place. Maybe for some small business owners, it's networking. And so just because you're busy now, it doesn't mean that there foreseeably might not be a time when you're not busy and you wish, I wish I would have networked through, and then I would have had all these connections that could have been referring me to build my business during the time when it's difficult right now. Or maybe it's advertising. It's just evaluating what types of advertising are working and making sure that we're still driving that revenue for when we especially need it, even though we may not need it as much right now.
That's awesome.
So
many great tips. Thank you so much for sharing with us and coming and joining me. And
thanks for
I
having
think
me.
we'll be definitely having some more guest speakers because this was great. So thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Thanks, Britta.